Hi everyone, and welcome to a preview of a new technology that RemObjects is planning to introduce for Delphi, an AI coding assistant named CodeBot. My name's David Millington. Some of you may know me. I used to work at Embarcadero until quite recently. What you may not know is that I've used AI heavily since it started becoming a really important part of programming a couple of years ago. Now, I've always enjoyed coding and do it for fun, and I have since I was a teenager. These days, I really enjoy coding with the assistance of an AI as my colleague in what we create. And in my view, Delphi programmers, like all of us, would really benefit from having one available. That's what this talk is about, a new coding assistant that is planned for Delphi. I tend to believe very strongly in modernization. Now, not everything the world brings as time goes past is good, but I genuinely believe a lot of it is. For all the things that happen, we make progress and improvements, sometimes huge jumps forward as a human species, and AI is one of those. And I've spent a large portion of my career working to bring modernity and productivity to Delphi and C++ Builder, including well before I joined Embarcadero. You can see one recent example on screen for Delphi's sister product, but I care about Delphi too. And in this, I know there are many community members who also desire modernity and modern tooling, and there are quite a few people I admire for their work and efforts. There are a lot of people who contribute modern and exciting things to the Delphi ecosystem. Among many wonderful developers and companies, one that is very interesting to any Delphi developer is RemObjects, who makes some absolutely amazing technology. And that brings us back to AI. I am really glad to be working with RemObjects on bringing modern capable AI tooling to the Delphi IDE. RemObjects have been around for over 20 years and make some great products for Delphi and other languages. If as a Delphi programmer you need to interoperate with .NET, the easiest way to do so is via Hydra. If you need a highly performant and secure data layer, Data Abstract is the way to go. If you need network services, whether servers or clients, the remoting SDK is brilliant. And the most amazing of them all is Oxygene, which is a modern object Pascal. I'd love to give a talk on modern Pascal and how beautifully designed and productive it is, but that would be off topic for a talk about AI. But I do recommend you check out what it offers, and maybe we'll hear more in future. So check out what this company offers. Given their background, modern approach, and focus on productive libraries and tooling, it's no coincidence that RemObjects are focusing on creating an AI coding assistant. So what are we going to go over today? First, I want to share what coding with AIs is like. I mentioned I do use AI a lot, and why? Now, I assure you I'm a perfectly competent programmer on my own. You'll have to take my word for that. But why do I use, and not only use, but love using AI assistants? To answer that, I want to share how I think programming has invisibly changed. There's been a fundamental shift in how we program. I also want to look at Smart Code Insight, which is an AI feature inbuilt in Delphi today. While it's great to have, and I'm glad it's there, I know that if you've only used Smart Code Insight, you might ask yourself why, as a community of Delphi developers, we need something else. And I aim to show that. Why are we building the new AI? That harks back to the fundamental shift in programming. Then I want to look at another AI tool that already exists for Pascal, CodeBot, and I'll demo that live running on a Mac. Now, it also works on Windows, but hey, modern world, other operating systems exist too, so let's use them. And finally, we'll get onto CodeBot for Delphi, the new product we're previewing. It is under heavy development right now, but we're keen to demo it to you. Delphi includes an AI assistant, Smart Code Insight, and while I love Delphi and AI, I don't personally use Smart Code Insight because it doesn't do what I personally look for. Of course, it's personal opinion, and I want to emphasize that I'm glad Delphi has it. But to share by contrast what I do want and find useful, I want my AI to see my code so we can work in it together. That's all relevant code and even the entire project if necessary. Now that may surprise you, and I've heard people worried about this, but here's why. Essentially, it's because an AI is like a human, and you wouldn't expect a junior dev to achieve anything if you didn't let them access the code, and same for an AI. It doesn't work. Humans need to see the code, and your other intelligent companion also needs to see the code for the same reason. But more what I most look for is agentic coding. This is where things really change. Now, an AI is smart, really smart, and can think and plan. You see, if you use OpenAI, you might just think of AI as chat, but it's not. AI thinks, and AI can, very genuinely, analyze code, form a plan to implement a feature or solve a bug, and execute it. And this is where things change. As a programmer, when you work with an AI, you often give intelligent, informed information, and then you let it work, just like it was a human. And this is a radically different way of thinking. Now, in some ways, it's not different at all. We're all used to that if we assign tasks or give input to a junior dev in our team. But to do that with a computer, for a computer to really be capable of that, is something very new. So these two are key. Context, lots of context, and acting semi-independently, being an agent. The best way to think of an AI is as a really enthusiastic junior developer. Think of them as that bouncy, enthusiastic colleague fresh out of university who's read a lot of code and will be super excited to do even the most boring work. But you need to guide them. You're the one who keeps an eye and ensures they follow the right path. That brings us back to context, which is reading code. And I genuinely recommend you think of an AI as just like a human when understanding this. The key here is not just the code on screen, like the current method or whatever you can copy paste. There's a fancy term called transitive understanding, which just means following from one thing to another. If you're solving a bug, you may have the location on screen where it becomes obvious. But often the actual bug is elsewhere, so you follow the chain of behavior. This method, which is part of this class, which set up this state, which uses this other class in this other file, and this is following code's behavior across multiple locations. So you've got to give your AI access to your code so it can follow the behavior of the system as a whole. Now, I've said a few times, think of an AI like a really enthusiastic junior developer, like a human. Now, one of the best things about working with people is talking to them. What call a talk? I have a problem that I can't figure out. Can I talk to you for a few minutes? Well, you can do that with an AI. And not only are you not taking time from another dev, but if you work remotely, you may not even have a nearby dev. Your AI is there, and they are really good at listening to you and digging into what you say. And agents. I mentioned a few minutes ago letting the AI plan and act. Look, as a developer, you focus on the hard problems. Thinking is the most important part of being a programmer. I find that what I find fun about programming is creativity, the sculpting of something. When you work with an AI, you do that. You think a lot, but instead of directly doing the typing, something else does. And that's how to use an AI agent. You still think about architecture and guidance, but you let something else do the rote work. I want to emphasize you stay highly involved, and in my opinion, you retain the fun parts. When I use an AI, I get more done, and I focus on the bits I personally find fun to do. I have always enjoyed programming, but with an AI, I enjoy programming even more. So, context. Being able to read code like a human and track code behavior from one part to another. In other words, both reading and understanding. And agentic. It plans and acts. You are the designer, not the typist. This truly is a paradigm shift, and I don't think you will have experienced this working with AI tools inside Delphi, so I want to show you what it's like outside Delphi. Okay, this is a screenshot of me using Claude Code, and this is what AI coding is really like. Now, this is from a personal project. I have grayed out a couple of things. Claude's interface is text. You hold a conversation with it, and at the top, it's suggesting to me that it does something. I say yes, but give it considerations, things that are important to me about the design. Remember, as an AI user, I think and design. But an AI is smart and can suggest really good things, so ask it. Here's where it gets exciting. Because it is intelligent, it plans. Here I am on the 5th step of 6 in implementing something. That's a list and a plan to implement what I asked it that it came up with. And then it does it. It writes and changes code. You can see a diff on screen. Now, of course, I can look at that and review the code. Major things like tell it it's wrong and to do it a different way, or minor things. One I did today was just telling an AI to name methods differently. So we have informed conversation, intelligent back and forth like with a person, multi-step planning and then multi-step execution with you as the designer, not the typist. And it's a genuine paradigm shift. People hype using terms like that, but there's a reason here. It really changes coding for the better. To me, it's the design, the creativity, the thinking, the construction that makes a programmer. And AI lets you do more of it. And I think I'm a decent programmer. I've written kernel drivers even. So when I say that I find that it lets me achieve things more easily that I used to find hard, that's a really meaningful statement. I do find some things hard. To be honest, I find many things hard sometimes, and AI does make them much easier for me to do. And I love doing things. Doing things is amazing. Now, I've just enthused about AI coding, so I need to talk about vibe coding. It's trendy. Vibe coding is where you abdicate responsibility. You don't look into problems anymore, you just let the AI do what it wants until you get a result. Now, I said more thinking, less typing, and vibe coding is where you do no thinking. I do not recommend this. Basically, it gets the same results as doing it with a junior developer, and we've all seen what happens when someone junior goes off without guidance and builds an entire system. Sometimes it's not great. So treat your AI as a colleague. Talk to it, advise it, work with it, rather than letting it do everything. Okay, that's what's changed in programming. That's what coding with AI is like. And I hope that screenshot with Claude Code really impressed you. To me, the most amazing thing is transitive understanding of code and planning sensibly what and how to do something, and AIs can do that. It really changes how you work. Let's have a quick look at Smart Code Insight. Now, for all the Delphi AIs I'm going to test today, I will do multiple things. First, ask it about interfaces to see if it understands it lives inside Delphi. I think it's a fairly easy question to answer. Ask it about delegation, which is to see if it replies with info on the implements keyword. The reason is to build on the previous reply, see if it understands we are talking Delphi interfaces and therefore that delegation means interface delegation. And finally, ask it to complete some code. I have a simple space where I need a Fibonacci function. I'll do this for comparison in all Delphi AIs. Like Claude Code, or like GitHub Copilot, Smart Code Insight works through a chat interface. You can ask questions, so let's ask it about interfaces. Interfaces are a common and fundamental thing in Delphi. And it's come back not even answering about Delphi. This is not really a useful answer. Okay, let's try delegation. Now this is a true answer, but it's not computer science delegation, and it's certainly not the Delphi implements keyword. Okay, let's try to get it to complete some code. I have some code on screen that needs a Fibonacci method, but there isn't one. You can invoke this via the context menu, which is quite tall, and I am screen recording on a small window, but let's see what it does. Okay, it can only complete selected code. Well, that's fair. Let's give it the method prototype for a Fibonacci function. And invoke it again. And that's great. It has given us a Fibonacci method. Let me delete all the comments around it to get that method. Okay, and it has a second implementation below. Cool, that could be quite useful actually, but still, let's just delete. And format. Okay, it completed a method. However, I don't use this because to me this system is not useful in practice. I don't want to have to do that just to invoke code completion. And finally, agent style coding. As far as I know, it just doesn't have it. You can't tell it implement something for me and have it do it. There's nothing there. So that's why I don't personally use Smart Code Insight. Compare it to the screenshot of Claude Code I showed earlier. All the things that I personally find beneficial about AI, the things I actually use and rely on for AI-assisted coding. Context, transitive understanding, agent behavior, things that allow me to work with it like a colleague to get things done. None of those are present. And that's why we think we can build something better. There's a lot of space here for an AI tool that behaves more like other tools. And just as a reminder, if you've used it, and I'm showing it only because it's in Delphi, same for even older versions of GitHub Copilot, which today feel terribly outdated, you might not get the excitement around AI coding. But there are amazing reasons to be excited. It is like an entire junior colleague in your IDE, and we genuinely live in the future. So we want to give you a valuable, context-aware, agentic coding assistant in Delphi, and we're calling it CodeBot. All right, let's look at what AI RemObjects already has, and then go on to see what we're developing. It's early days, but we can already show you more than exists in Delphi today. I mentioned earlier that RemObjects makes a modern Pascal compiler, and it also has its own IDEs, including one that runs natively on Mac. These are called Fire and Water. Fire runs on Mac, and Water runs on Windows. They have the same functionality, so what I'm about to show you works just fine on Water on Windows too. But it's the modern world, and people use Macs, and I use a Mac, so I'll show you a Pascal program on Mac, with an AI solving an issue there. This is the first CodeBot, and it already exists. Now, it's great. It has context. It can read your code and answer questions about it. It can follow to other files. But it does not yet act as an agent. It doesn't create a plan and do things for you. So in terms of expectations, what I will show you is better than Smart Code Insight, but not yet up to where Claude Code is. So let's have a look at Fire on a Mac. Remember, you can do this in Windows too. Here I have one of the Oxygene, in other words Pascal, sample apps. This one is a simple Mac app that displays a metal shader. I'll show it running in a moment, but right now it won't compile, which we're going to fix with AI. So you can see Pascal syntax here, but note it's using the Apple AppKit framework directly. Now let's open a file that happens to have an error. First, CodeBot can be shown through View CodeBot and lives in this panel on the right-hand side of the IDE. This file has an error, and that error lies somewhere in this shader. So here I think is a good but simple example of an AI solving an issue. This is a shader language, not something I know well, so definitely somewhere in AI can help me. But remember, they can help with things you do know well too, often even more so because you build on each other. And I'll give it a vague description because, hey, I might sometimes be tired and might not communicate well, and I just want to get something done, and an AI never gets tired and will help you when you are. So let's see, the method, and I'll copy the name here, doesn't compile. What's wrong? That'll do. No need to give it the error message yet unless it turns out to need it, because remember, it's smart, it can figure it out. And look, it gets the file contents automatically. This means it is partway to being agentic, and it correctly identifies the issue. I have a constant, and yet I'm trying to modify it. Of course it won't work. But I can tell you, I didn't spot this when I first got this problem. This is not actually a fake example. This is a real example that I genuinely encountered and then decided to use to show you. Like any good AI, CodeBot can hold a conversation and has a memory. Let's thank it. I like being polite to AIs. And for interest, let's now build and run the app. Here you can see a simple metal shader as a native Cocoa macOS app. And remember, this is all built in Pascal with the Oxygene modern Pascal language. Okay, so that's the existing CodeBot in Fire on Mac in a Pascal app with a metal shader. And remember, it works in Water on Windows as well. In development, though, is CodeBot for Delphi, and it has big goals. Those are to have context, to be able to traverse code and understand it. We are working on a Delphi-specific context engine here that is intended to superpower an AI rather than have generic file reading. Plus, we want it to be agentic. It should analyze, plan, and act. In other words, bring to Delphi the true, modern, groundbreaking AI coding. But this is all in development. It is not agentic yet, and the context engine is still being developed, so what I will show you is less than what's on screen. And because of that, I want to emphasize that this is a preview and it's not done. These are goals, not promises. But let's have a look at what we have working. This is CodeBot in Delphi. Just like CodeBot in Fire or Water or GitHub Copilot, or for that matter, like Smart Code Insight, it has a chat window. Let's give it the same test. Remember interfaces, delegation, and code completion, and see if it knows what Delphi is to start by asking it about interfaces. And yes, it does. In fact, it gave a pretty good answer. It certainly knows it's living inside Delphi, and it knows how Delphi interfaces work. Again, let's think it, and why not ask it to tell us more now about delegation. Now I'm referring to delegating interfaces, but interpreting that requires the conversation memory. A memory is great, because like a person, it will remember and follow you as you thread through multiple topics in your daily work. Most importantly, if it really knows what it's talking about when I ask it about delegation, and remember in the prompt I'm no longer using the word interface as a test, it will note the implements keyword, which I think isn't super well known, I think even among many Delphi developers, so this is a bit of a test. How well it knows the more interesting bits of the Delphi language and how well it can infer. And look, it has replied about interfaces, showing it has memory, and yes, it talks about the implements keyword. In other words, it's a full chat, and when it comes to Delphi, it knows what it's talking about. But let's try something else. One area that we think AI can help is code completion. Something like LSP is great, but ultimately it suggests just single symbols, single words. These days, we can suggest entire implementations. Here I have the same incomplete code as before. If you remember, I'm trying to get the Fibonacci sequence, which I think is a good basic test, but I haven't got the method. Now, we might normally think of code completing as single symbols, so I'd have to manually write the method and use completion as I go, but AI is smarter. Let me invoke CodeBot code completion just in this blank space and see what it does. And you can see it is completing code, but it's not giving a single method call. It's not even giving the method prototype. It's giving us the entire method. AI is smart. It can infer what you're trying to do, and it understood from context that I needed a Fibonacci method. It figured that out for me, so it wrote one for me. This is a wonderful example of how AI improves coding. Now, I could look up on Wikipedia how the Fibonacci sequence works and write something, but as a coder, what I really want is the method to be there so I can move on to the interesting part, which is using it. AI does that work for me. Let me press Tab to accept, and it inserts the AI code completed method. Folks, this is miles ahead. We're not completing individual names, but code completing entire blocks of code. Think about this scaled up. We think with agent mode, so it can think and plan. We can have AI help you do major large work. It works for other languages. Let's bring it to Delphi. So that's a tiny preview. You saw it work in the Delphi IDE, but there's a lot of infrastructure you haven't seen to get it working. It is smart. It knows it's in Delphi, it can provide good answers, can hold a conversation. Maybe you can use it to onboard new devs if your business is struggling to find Delphi developers, they can ask it for guidance. It can also complete code, and we think old code completion is just not relevant anymore. Contextual, smart, AI-powered code completion is where it's at. CodeBot provides it. But it's not finished. We need to give it more context, and we are working on the agentic coding. Both those are in development. So that's it, folks. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned a bunch about what modern AI-powered coding looks like and enjoyed seeing both what's already available and a preview or teaser of what we hope to bring to you and Delphi. And for further info, you can find out more at remobjects.com/codebot. As a reminder, check out Oxygene, the modern object Pascal in both Mac and Windows. And look at other RemObjects tech too. It's really impressive stuff. Hydra alone, which helps you interop between Delphi and .NET, is amazing. Data Abstract for high performance and secure data. Remoting SDK for network services and clients. Our goal for CodeBot for Delphi is to give you an entire junior developer sidekick in your IDE. One that knows Delphi, that you can talk to, and that can do tasks for you. The idea is not just productivity, but letting you focus on the fun parts of your job. Remember the paradigm shift. We've very quietly moved to a new world as developers, and using AI is a night and day difference, and it is amazing. Here at RemObjects, we plan to bring it to you.